August 10th, 2019, a series of thrilling failures. Big law firms and law schools and businesses and corporations and executive education programs say that they want their professionals and students to be more human. They say they want their people to be happy and ethical and to be of service. They say they want to be positive forces in society, but they don't mean it. Becoming human is a lot of work. That should be obvious to anyone who is human or is trying to be. But big law firms and law schools and businesses and corporations and executive education programs don't want to put in the time. The time to work on human development takes away from the time to take on business development and immediate profit-making activities. The decision makers for big law firms and law schools and businesses and corporations and executive education programs like to feel that they know about art, know about civility, know what it would take to humanize the workplace. But they don't. Or if I am less charitable, just want to check off a box. They just want to check off a box for human development on their corporate social responsibility checklist and get back to the business of making more money and pleasing their bosses that are pressuring them to make more money, and then go back to wringing their hands about the lack of humanity in the workplace and wistfully believing that they know the answers to a better world if only it were a better world. So they request lip service. And they mistakenly think that I might be the person who could give that to them. But they don't know me. They may be smart, but they aren't wise, and they want me to make it brief. No. They say they might be able to give this work on human development an hour a week. No. They want speeches that are humorous and engaging, that deliver a few takeaways, motivation, hope, and ass-kissing. A big jerk off. No. I'm an artist. I'm a teacher. I'm a serious person. I'm not going to sell out my whole life and all I know that is important to be a sideshow for these people. And speaking of sales, they want me to sell them, wine them and dine them, be obsequious, recognize their phony glory, wait for their basic responses to simple questions for weeks, pursue them like the prettiest girl in school, playing hard to get. When I was younger, my pride would be hurt by all of this, and I couldn't participate in it. Now I simply can't do it because it's so false. I am consciously writing about they and them in this piece and not in specifics because it's all of them. It's systemic. Oh, some individuals are sincere. They would really like to do what is necessary, but they are powerless and sad, overwhelmed by what has happened. Jeffrey Epstein apparently killed himself this morning. It was suicide, even if it was at someone else's hand or by their plotting. It is clear now that there was no other possible ending for his story, even as it leaves so many mysteries for the rest of us. He did it all for the masters, made them money, got their dicks sucked, sometimes by children, did all sorts of awful things involving wallets and genitals, just like the big law firms and law schools and businesses and corporations and executive education programs. You can't serve two masters. The choices are art or suicide. The big law firms and law schools and businesses and corporations and executive education programs are suicidal. Beautiful lavatories, reminiscent of the Roman Empire, well-educated, highly credentialed people, reclining in marble tubs, holding chalices filled with fine wine, slitting their wrists and letting the warm, salty blood mix with the clear, warm water, opulent deaths, human sacrifices to sins of omission, a denial of the work of humanity, for $1, a blowjob, and bows of meaningless respect. Am I wrong to compare these decision makers of the big law firms and law schools and businesses and corporations and executive education programs to Jeffrey Epstein? Am I angry or unkind? Hardly. As a matter of fact, I feel bad for them. I'm lucky. My failures always led to my progress. I never made mistakes that end my life or lose my soul. I will die a natural death, satisfied that I honored the nature that God assigned to me, because I was blessed by God to have a nature that does just that. God assigned me a nature incapable of trying to speak to him, a mouthpiece of humanity, of not trying. God assigned me a nature incapable of not trying to speak to him, a mouthpiece of humanity, talking loudly to God so that other people can overhear. No genius, that's for sure, but a sincere person connected to God's world and blind and deaf to the lousy facsimile created by men who want to make claims that they know better, but naive enough, childlike enough, even childish enough to interact with man's world, with people and entities such as big law firms and law schools and businesses and corporations and executive education programs, and learning God's glory in the negative, and learning man's myriad failures in detail, and regarding them with love. In other words, an artist, not by choice, any more than a sparrow chose being a bird. Nothing special, just natural, a natural creation whose creator was supernatural, straddling heaven and earth, my groin perpendicular to purgatory. Purgatory is the place where you figure things out. You always see that heaven is the right choice, and the discomfort that is unpleasant but short of agony turns to joy. I betrayed myself once, just once. I was about 40 years old. I never betrayed myself before that or after. I think I betrayed myself just to see what it felt like. It was so painful that I never did it again. It sucked. It's not my nature to betray myself. But these poor bastards and bitches, kings and queens Midas. Was I foolish to think that I could teach these people? Yes. But it was a noble foolishness, and maybe I did my duty by offering my services. They can never say that they weren't told. But they have chosen their demise, or maybe they were born condemned to it. Why did they doggedly hold onto something so worthless, dumb as a dog, refusing to surrender a rag held in clenched teeth, as if the filthy cloth was the definition of its entire being? These people are so impressed and intimidated by what they call work. They sigh and wish for their easy chair. They get up every day and devote themselves to something that makes them feel like shit. They distract themselves with objects of comfort and status. They have advisors suggest their vacations, travel experts. They don't know what they like. They don't even know where they'd like to go. They are consumed with calculations. How can they honor their masters and best their rivals? Insecure, angry, smug in their ignorance, strutting unnatural struts, or with servile faux humility, never comfortable, never authentic, carrying sacks of unprocessed feeling, untended grief, exiled from their true self, alienated from that they could possibly love. The luckiest of them will suffer career disasters, crap out, and find there is a whole world beyond the maze of life, beyond the rat race, a whole world, the real world. What I thought was marketing was research and my personal human development. Let the dead bury their own dead. Takeaways. Art is where human development happens. All the derivative things written by lawyers and business people about diversity, satisfaction, service, blah, 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 are pale, incorrect copies of work that artists do independently. Art is hard work. You can't do it for an hour a week or listen to a PowerPoint and know anything about it. You can't make your life about getting rich or serving the rich and make art or be human. It just doesn't work that way. Art needs equality. Looking down on people is not artistic. Hierarchies are not artistic. The lack of humanity in professionals and business people, their greed and lust and condescension is destroying the world. And there is nothing that I can give these people but the truth. I certainly can't work with them or take their money. Professionalism has nothing to do with business. A professional, by definition, serves his or her client in the context of general service to the community. Think of a good doctor or a good lawyer or a good teacher or nurse or police officer serving individuals, serving us all. And in contrast, think of Jeffrey Epstein or William Barr, who manipulate and distort systems to serve their clients and steal for themselves, committed to personal wealth and power by insipid, unctuous catering to and cheating those with more wealth and power, leveraging their intelligence and knowledge to to get to the top and then jump off the building instead of personal and communal well-being. Examples like Barr and Epstein are not extreme. I am sure the people of big law firms and law schools and businesses and corporations and executive education programs will be offended to be compared to Barr and particularly Epstein. Some defend them. Some fashion abstract arguments defending their obvious evils by ignoring the natural world that they never see, in the mendacious structures that they build, live in, work in, and become until they disappear. They are the system. The suicide is executed long before the wrists are slit, their bodies and souls absorbed into a radioactive cloud, seeping across the earth, murdering innocents in its wake. They stopped being human or potentially human and became the end of the world, part of corporate Manson families, hypnotized cult members with postgraduate degrees, killing and being killed, phony culture of murder-suicide. What happens on Wall Street and in Washington, D.C. happens on LaSalle Street in Chicago and Main Street in Dubuque. My last marketing meeting was at LaSalle and Wacker. Beehive of creatures thoughtlessly doing what they are programmed to do, some pausing for coffee and quiche, oblivious to their own impending exposure to danger and the suffering of others, purposely avoiding meeting, small talk, purposely avoiding action, keeping busy, purposely avoiding self-determination, working, purposely avoiding the vulnerability and fragility of human life, interacting with each other with cold and pleasant indifference and calling it normal, a theme park that people are paid to go to, their salaries dependent on their acting like they're having a good time when they hate it, by destroying their consciences so doubt or shame will never be exposed to their masters. An interesting visit to a ring of hell that I didn't have to stay in. Truisms of improvisational study like yes and play the scene you are in are corporate bromides. They distill something deep and broad into something broad. Using such maxims is like prescribing a throat lozenge. They distill something deep and broad into something broad. Using such maxims is like prescribing a throat lozenge for esophageal cancer. If someone wants to learn what I have to teach, they better be ready to give it the time and effort that I do and honor it with the seriousness it demands. Final point. One is never rejected by who or what belongs to him or her. One never fails at what one is meant to do. All this sadness and failure around me this morning, and yet I am happy, even thrillingly so. Let me do that again. All this sadness and failure around me this morning, and yet I am happy, even thrillingly so, because I am free. Copyright 2019, Richard Thomas.